Okay, so if you're someone that doesn't shoot in manual mode because you don't understand it, you don't know how it works, you find it confusing, you think it's complicated, then this video is for you, because if you follow along, by the end of the video, I'm going to get you shooting in manual mode and getting the correct exposure, because it's really easy. I think that other photographers make it sound like it's really complicated, but photography in general, it's actually really easy. There's three things that you need to understand: shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. If you understand those things and what they do, then you have everything you need to craft any image that you want to. But I think we make it sound more complicated. So I'm going to break it down for you in this video. So these three things that we just talked about form part of what is called the exposure triangle. So that's your shutter speed, your aperture, and your ISO. And the idea is to have those three things in balance with each other. Okay, so to have the right settings in each one so that they balance each other so that you get the correct exposure. What that means is just that your photograph is not going to be too bright, it's not going to be too dark. But if it was just about getting the correct exposure, then if you think about it, why wouldn't you just shoot in automatic mode? Because automatic mode pretty much nails it every single time. And I mean, we've had those modes since the 70s and they've been really, really good. And the reason is control. You want to have control over your photograph because there's other things apart from exposure that you can add or remove from your photograph. Let me give you an example. Let's say that I'm photographing a moving subject. So we've got some people running, for example, and I wanted to highlight the fact that they are running. I could set a slow shutter speed, and because the shutter's open for a longer period of time, I would get some motion blur. So that's that dragging sort of blur that you get in your photographs that we've all associated with movement. Or maybe you don't want that. Maybe you want to freeze a moment in time, and then you could set a really fast shutter speed so that it's so short that it just freezes time. Everything's nice and sharp. There's no blur at all. And then you've got your aperture, and your aperture controls your depth of field, which is the bokeh or the areas that are out of focus so that you get a nice blurry background, for example. So if you're photographing someone in front of a really busy background, you could focus on them, set an aperture of something like, say, f2.8, and then everything in the background will be nice and blurry. But again, maybe you want the opposite of that. Maybe you want more things in focus, and then you could set an aperture of something like, say, f22, and then more things would be in focus. So as you can see, we can control more elements in the photograph by using our shutter speed and our aperture to design the image that we want to create. Now, there is one other control, which is your ISO, and the ISO doesn't have any artistic element to it at all. Simply put, the ISO is the amplification that comes out of your sensor. So think of it as a volume knob, but instead of volume, it's brightness. So if you turn it up, the image gets brighter. If you turn it down, the image gets darker. So that is purely a mathematical equation. It doesn't add any artistic elements to the photo. But I think that with all of this stuff, I think it's actually easier to see how it works rather than just talk about it. So let's set up a camera and show you how this actually works. Okay, so I've got a camera here with a external monitor. That way you can see everything that I'm seeing on the back of the screen, and I'll put that up somewhere here. And apologies about all the noise. It's a fairly busy street. I'm on my balcony and there's a lot of traffic and a lot of birds that you might be able to hear. I'll try and clean it up in the edit. Now, on the camera, you can see that I am in manual mode, and you can see those three controls that we talked about earlier. So the shutter speed, the aperture, and the ISO. Now, I should point out that your camera might look a little different to this, but it's exactly the same. The information will be the same. It's just that the layout of your camera might look a little different. You can see in here that I'm in manual mode, and this camera is set to shoot at 1/250th of a second at f5.0 at an ISO of 200. And underneath that, you're going to see a little meter, and that is your light meter indicator. That is what tells you whether the camera thinks that your photograph is overexposed or underexposed. So that's key to getting the correct exposure. Now, it is just an indicator. You have full creative control. You might want to make your photograph a little bit darker or a little bit brighter, so that's completely up to you, but it gives you a starting point. And the way that it works is that we take a light reading from the camera, and the way that we do that is we halfway press the shutter button, so just press it down halfway, and you'll notice that there's a little indicator that appears on that range. At the moment, it's 2 under, so on the minus side. Okay, so anything to the left, which is a minus, means it's underexposed by a certain number of stops. Anything to the right means it's overexposed. In this case, it's just over 2 stops underexposed. So if I take a photograph now, it's going to be 2 stops under, which is underexposed, which means it's darker. So I'll take a photo and you can see that that's way too dark. So how do we fix this? Well, we've got those 3 controls that we can change in order to bring up our exposure. The way that I like to do it, and what I would recommend you to do, is I always start off with the shutter speed, then I do my aperture, and then I do my ISO last. So in this case, obviously I'm not letting enough light in. I need to change my shutter speed. It's too fast at the moment. I need to let more light in. Now, the easiest way to do this is that when you take a light meter reading, as I'm doing right now, you can see that little indicator pop up. That meter remains active for around about 3 seconds. It depends on each camera, but it's about 3 seconds. And whilst it's active, if you change any of the dials, if you change like the dials for the shutter speed or the aperture, it remains active and it resets the clock. So every time you change something, the clock goes back to 0. Those 3 seconds go back to 0, and it updates the screen as well to let you know where it's at. So this is what we're going to do. In this particular camera, the top dial, you can see here, that updates my shutter speed, and then the back dial changes my aperture. And in order to change the ISO, I need to go into the menu, but I'll show you that in a second. So in this case, I'm going to activate the light meter, and then whilst it's on, I'm going to change my shutter speed. Now, as you can see, I'm changing it up and down, and it's updating on the little meter. The idea is to get it onto the 0, okay? So according to the camera now, I should get a correct exposure. So we're going to take a photo now. And as you can see, the photo is correctly exposed. Now, let's go back to what it was before. In fact, let's change it to, say, 1/100th of a second. If I take a light meter reading now, you can see that it's under still by 1 stop, or just over 1 stop. So instead of the shutter speed now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my aperture. So we're going to do the same thing here. And according to the camera, again, now f3.2, that's what I need to take a correctly exposed photo. So let's take another photo. And as you can see now, it is, let me bring it up again. It is correctly exposed. So that's how you dial in your exposure. Now, the last control that we had, don't forget, is the ISO. So let's do this. Let's go and change the aperture to 5.6, and let's do 125th of a second. Let's take a light meter reading. As you can see now, I'm under by 2 stops again, too dark. So I need to raise my ISO. So I will go and change my ISO. Now, it works a little different with the ISO in this camera anyway, which is I need to go in there in the ISO settings, and then I need to change the ISO in here. And there's no live indicator like we have on the other ones where the dial meter is moving up and down. So I'm just going to take it up to two stops. And as you can see now, with this one just under, actually, let's go up a little higher. It is getting darker now, which is probably why the light is changing. So according to this, that's correct. So let's take another photo. Okay, and you can see that it is correctly exposed again. So that's how you use those controls to dial in your exposure. Now let's talk about the other things that we mentioned earlier, which is the artistic component of these settings. So shutter speed controls your blur or lack thereof, and then your aperture controls your depth of field. Okay, so what I'm going to do now to illustrate that, I can't show you the blur one because I don't have anything that's moving in the scene there, but I can show you the depth of field one. So if I wanted to photograph, let's just say for argument's sake, there is a pole up there. I'm going to show you, you can see here, turn this around there, you can see that there is a pole, electricity pole right there. Let's say that for whatever reason I wanted to photograph that and I wanted the background to be blurry. So as we know, in order to get a blurry background, you need a large aperture. So let's change this to f2.8. This is as wide as this lens goes. And it's saying now, if I take a light meter reading, that I'm overexposed. It's too bright now. Okay, so if I take a photo, you'll see that the image is too bright. So let's bring our shutter speed up a little bit so that we make it faster, which means it's going to be darker because less light. And if I take a photo, what you'll notice now is that, first of all, it's correctly exposed. But let me bring up the photo and zoom in a little bit. If I zoom in, you can see that the pole itself is actually in focus. But you can see everything in the background is nice and blurry. Those are supposed to be boats there, okay? They're blurry. So this is how you control your background or your foreground being out of focus, that blurriness, the bokeh. Now, what if we didn't want that? Well, in that case, we need a much smaller aperture. So let's take our aperture to, let's go to something like, say, well, let's go to f20, which is quite small, okay? If I take a light meter reading now, it doesn't even show up on the light meter. It's telling me that it's over more than 3 stops under, because there's a little arrow there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring down my shutter speed right down, okay? And that's saying 1/6 of a second with that aperture would be appropriate. The problem is that even though I'm on a tripod, when I push the shutter button, I might actually end up shaking the camera just a little bit. So we're going to bring our ISO, not that one, this one here. We're going to bring our ISO to something like, say, let's go to 3200, which means I've raced it over now. So I'm going to bring that down to, say, 1/20th of a second at f20, and that looks like it's correctly exposed. I'm going to take the same photo, and I'm still focusing on the light pole that you saw before. Okay, so let me just confirm. Yep. And now, if I take a photograph, or I bring up the photograph, and if I zoom in here now, you'll notice that the pole is still in focus, and now I've got the boats, they're much more in focus. In fact, let's close the lens a little bit more even. This one goes up to what, f32. Let's go all the way to f32. Let's bring then our shutter speed to 1/8 of a second, or 1/6 of a second, and let me just make sure that I'll focus on that pole. Okay, so that's focusing on the pole. If I take that photograph now, as long as there's no shake in the camera, let me zoom in. And oops, I've got a bit of shake there. So let me do that again. In fact, let me set up a 2-second exposure or 2-second delay. So we'll do that. Okay, and if I bring up that photo now, you'll notice the pole is nice and sharp. Okay, and you can see that the boats are also in focus. So that's how you can change or give your photo a bit of an artistic look. Do you want a blurry background? Do you not want a blurry background? And you do exactly the same thing with the shutter speed. Now let me switch this back to normal, and I want to show you the one thing that's going to make it even easier. So that's the traditional way that people teach it, right? I'm going to show you now a much easier way of doing it. So we talked about how we can add artistic elements to the photo using our shutter speed and our aperture. Now our ISO, there's no artistic element to that at all. All that does is it boosts the signal up or down, makes it brighter or darker. So given that you choose your shutter speed and your aperture, and then you have to move the ISO to get it back onto 0, there's a much better way to do it. Let me show you. Let's say that I want to set my aperture to, let's say, to 5.6, and I want my shutter speed to be, let's say, 1/60th of a second. In this case, I would have to go in and find out what ISO I need in order to get a correct exposure, because if I take a light reading, you can see that I'm overexposed. So we're going to change our ISO, but we're going to do something different. And this is the change that I was talking about earlier. If we go all the way down to the smallest setting on your ISO, you will notice there is an auto setting in there. We're going to select that. Now, watch what happens. If I take a light reading, at the moment the ISO says auto, but if I take a light meter reading, it updates and it tells me exactly what ISO I need to be at. It doesn't just tell me, it actually sets it to that ISO. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a photo, and the photo will be correctly exposed. Now let me go and change some of the settings. Let's go and change that to, say, f8. That's it. I'm just going to take a photo now. What? And the photo is correctly exposed. Let me change the shutter speed to 1/40th. I'm going to take another photo. And the photo is correctly exposed. Okay, so this is a much better way of doing it, because it gives you one less thing that you have to worry about. All right. So when you're first getting started, you just want to make things a little bit easier. Start with this, and then when you feel comfortable, if you want to, you can set your ISO manually if you want to. But when you're first getting started, this is one less thing that you need to worry about. Now, there are some limits, of course, depending on your camera. Your ISO will only go up to a certain point, and it will go down to a certain point. And if you reach those limits, then obviously you will still have to change your shutter speed or your aperture just to compensate for that a little bit. But most of the time, that's going to work really nicely for you. So I urge you to give it a go, change it to auto, see how you go. And yeah, I'd love to hear what kind of results you get. Okay, so I hope that all of that made sense, but just in case, I made a reference guide for you that you can download for free. The link will be on the screen. There'll be a QR code and also a link in the description of this video. You can download that and just keep it with you. You can print it out or put it on your phone. And in fact, there's a whole bunch of free stuff in there that you can download from that same link. So make sure that you go check that out. And if you've got any questions about anything that I covered here today, leave them in the comment section. I do my best to answer and to read all of the messages that come through. And if you like this video, please don't forget to give the video a like. And if you want to see more content like this, then do make sure to subscribe to the channel by clicking the subscribe button and the notification bell. That way YouTube will let you know when I upload my next video. But that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.